It happened long before our time. It would change the face of our planet forever. A gigantic object from space smashed into the Earth. The planet was transformed into a fiery furnace. It was left a wasteland. All life was extinguished. In one massive blow, a whole era of Earth's history came to an end. But the world recovered and began to bloom once again. The age of humanity dawned. Man conquered the Earth and subdued it. But the cosmos has long been preparing its second strike. This is a future history of our planet and its inhabitants. In that future, we are threatened by a catastrophe on an unimaginable scale. A catastrophe just like the one that happened so long ago. Two years ago, a deadly comet was discovered. Since then, almost everywhere in the world, people have constantly watched the skies. Only a few very remote areas have not yet heard of the imminent danger. Elsewhere, people are working to avert the disaster at the last minute.
Good, getting started.
Yeah? In 10 minutes. Don't worry, I'll be there.
The Center for Advanced European Studies, nicknamed CESAR, in Bonn, Germany. Geologist Jan Smit is carrying a core sample from the floor of the Atlantic, a reminder of the catastrophe 65 million years ago.
65 million years ago. You see this layer of green spherules and brownish stuff.
In the light of this evidence from the past, he is meeting with an international team of scientists to discuss the possible consequences of a comet hitting the Earth.
In Canada, that during the winter live in frozen lakes.
If it happens, what will it mean for our world and its 7 billion people?
This is going to obliterate all the life on a continental scale. Anything that's unprotected is going to die within the first few minutes after this impact.
Today is the day. The telescopes of the world's largest observatories are all trained on one target. Astrophysicist Noah Boyle heads the observation team in Hawaii. He and computer scientist Xiang Yatan have supplied important data for the mission.
12 months after the discovery of the
Thanks, Xiang.
control rooms
I checked my data again.
Space agencies around the world have been on red alert ever since. This project, established under the most intense pressure imaginable, represents the collective brain power of our planet's
We'll have to blast
best
at least a tenth of
scientists.
the comet to deflect it from
The
its
warhead
orbit.
aboard the Ariane 5 is 800
You know,
times
I'd rather bet on
more
science than
powerful.
faith, but we better pray this
It
works.
will be impossible to destroy the ice and matter of those
A probe with a nuclear warhead 800 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima has been launched to deflect the comet from its course. Like billions of people around the world, the Vaton family are anxiously awaiting the outcome of the probe's mission.
You'll recall, almost 6 months ago, the Ariane 5 began its voyage from the European Space Agency Launch Center in Kourou. Overcoming immense technical obstacles, engineers finally succeeded in mounting the rocket launcher's payload, a giant...
Have they blown it up?
They will. Don't you worry.
At just 2 minutes until impact of the sensor, here are pictures of the comet transmitted live.
The huge lump of ice and rock is racing toward Earth at over 200,000 kilometers an hour. Fernando Martinez has been working in Houston for several years to support his wife and children in Mexico.
And now, a message from the President of the United States.
Good morning. On this day, where the destiny of our precious world is at stake, the government of the United States of America can be proud of the effort our country has made in cooperation with the international community.
But will the probe succeed? Given the limits of the technology, scientists have their doubts.
18 months is a very short time in which to prepare any sort of response to a major emergency of this kind.
Physicist Alan Harris runs an international research program aimed at averting catastrophic collisions.
There would be no time to develop any more powerful type of rocket than is in everyday use at the present time. And that rocket would have to be refitted in about 12 months in order to carry a payload of some 4 tons.
The largest available launch vehicle is the European Space Agency's Ariane 5. With such a short lead time, it's the only option.
The rendezvous point will be at about the distance of the planet Mars, and that will be some 4 weeks before the comet is due to impact the Earth. If this doesn't work, there's absolutely nothing we can do to avoid the greatest natural catastrophe that civilization has ever experienced.
This is the moment of truth. May God be with us all.
If they don't crack it, the sensor at least will give us the exact position of the comet.
The vast explosive power of the warhead is dissipated into space. The comet remains on course for Earth.
Papa, what's going to happen now?
The point of
Notstandsgesetze.
The comet of this size, coming at us from the outer reaches of the solar system, is traveling at very high velocity. It has a tremendous amount of kinetic energy. The forces required to deflect or destroy a comet of this size are completely beyond what is available with current technology. And so, in my opinion, this attempt was doomed to failure right from the start, and I really can't see anything that we could possibly do.
News of the mission's failure spreads like wildfire. Yet there are remote regions that remain oblivious to the growing fear. Lomama and the other men of the Pygmy Baka tribe go on hunting as usual.
No, Maria. I'm sure you're safe in Yucatan. I'll be with you soon, Maria.
How's our little baby doing? Good. And Luisa? Hey, little lady.
No, Maria. I'll take the smaller roads. I should be there in about 3 days. Stop worrying. I love you.
Fernando heads out of Houston to return to Mexico. No one yet knows just when the comet will hit. Far from the big city, it is deceptively calm. In populated areas, however, the situation is deteriorating.
Höchstwahrscheinlich werden die Grenzen geschlossen, das Notstandsrecht wird überall in Kraft treten und die strategischen Reserven werden ausschließlich für die eigenen Belange benutzt.
Sociologist Wolf Dombrowski is a world-renowned disaster management expert.
Interessanterweise sind die strategischen Reserven unterschiedlich verteilt. Es gibt sowas wie betriebswichtige Reserven, es gibt versorgungswichtige Personale und für all diese Bereiche sind Zuteilungspläne vorhanden. Also es sind keineswegs Reserven für die gesamte Bevölkerung.
National strategic reserves include non-perishable food, water, medicine and fuel. In Germany, the stocks will last between 3 and 4 months, assuming they survive the disaster. What happens after that is anybody's guess.
We have a comet coming in at 135,000 miles an hour. It's 8 miles across, and it's going to hit the Earth at almost all of that velocity. The atmosphere counts for nothing. Something like that will release 100 million megatons of energy. It plows through the atmosphere in a second or two. Whether it's a deep ocean or not, doesn't matter. It's so much bigger than even the depth of the deepest ocean that it just blasts out a huge crater. This is going to obliterate all the life on a continental scale. Anything that's unprotected is going to die within the first few minutes after this impact.
Knows exactly where the comet's point of impact will be.
Okay, Chad. Now 2 degrees south.
Experts are working round the clock to predict just where the comet will hit.
Okay, I see. We just have to wait.
Wow. This thing's putting out 100,000 kilograms of dust per second. That's like 10 times more than Comet Halley in 1986. No wonder it's got such a big tail.
Noah? I've got a leak from a friend in Arecibo. They've estimated the coordinates of the point of impact.
Have they released it?
No, it's top secret. They won't go public until they've got an evacuation plan.
The point of impact is now known, but the breakthrough wasn't made with optical telescopes. The radio telescope in Arecibo Puerto Rico is the largest in the world. Its data, 10 times more precise than an optical telescope's, made it possible to plot the point of impact to within a few kilometers.
The problem with this is we have to wait until the comet is really quite close to the Earth, about 2 weeks before the impact. But at that time, it will be possible to transmit a radio signal to the comet. The comet will reflect a part of this signal, and that will be then received at the ground as an echo. Now, the transmitted signal will have a particular frequency, and the echo will have a slightly different frequency. And on the basis of these radar data, that we will then be able to calculate exactly where on the surface of the Earth and at what time the comet will hit.
The point of impact has still not been announced.
Beloved people of Mexico, this is a tragic day in the history of our country. We have just received news that the point of impact of the comet will be somewhere in the region of the Yucatan Peninsula. Credible sources predict the complete destruction of our country and the entire Gulf of Mexico region.
Can the whole Gulf of Mexico region be evacuated in such a short time?
In diesem konkreten Fall gibt es keinen historischen Vorläufer, dass ein ganzer Staat sich und seine Gesellschaft evakuiert hat. Es wird individuelle Selbstevakuierung geben. Also die Leute werden selbst wegfahren wollen und das zu Hunderttausenden. Aber im Sinne von ein Staat organisiert seine eigene Evakuierung, das halte ich für völlig unmöglich.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the news at 8. Tonight's coverage will be devoted exclusively to the comet. 3 days ago, scientists finally succeeded in determining the impact.
At least at my parents' place in Mattoon, we'd all be together.
And how are we supposed to get there now?
Efforts were underway in the region, leading to outbursts of violence in Mexico and Southern California. U.S. police and National Guard units...
Michelle, from now on, do not take Sarah out alone.
Oh, Papa, no one's
Michelle, end of discussion.
I'll come down once I'm ready, okay, Sherry? Give me half an hour.
In Hawaii, the scientists have finished their work.
What are you doing? Don't you want to be with your family when it hits?
My parents died in a car crash when I was 15. My dad used to take me camping. We'd lie in our sleeping bags looking at the stars. Now I've got a front row seat. I'm not giving it up.
Okay, take care of yourself, all right? And look after Shang for me.
She's already gone home. Xiang?
Do you think the seismographic data will transmit during the impact?
What are you doing here? Didn't you want to... I mean, weren't you supposed to be on a plane like hours ago?
We'll fight the mob for a seat. At least we have something to do here. Don't we?
There are many evacuation plans which work perfectly in theory, but experience shows that evacuating even a single large city can end in chaos. Hardly anyone actually makes it to their destination.
Auf dem Weg dorthin wird es höchstwahrscheinlich zu sehr unangenehmen Szenen kommen, weil Verkehrsunfälle passieren, Autos liegen bleiben werden. Andere werden dann diese Autos mit Gewalt von der Straße räumen, sodass um Besitztümer, um Überlebenschancen auch bestimmt gekämpft werden wird.
Law and order is breaking down. In the final days before impact, people are on edge as never before. Fernando has been walking for days. He hasn't met a soul who could have warned him. New York City is almost 3,000 kilometers from the expected point of impact, but New Yorkers fear the worst. Most of them have already left. Anyone who could afford it has fled to another continent. The others are trying to cross the border into Canada. Dr. David Sutler specializes in the psychological consequences of hurricanes, earthquakes, and tsunamis.
As Hurricane Emily was making a direct threat on Charleston, South Carolina, I went out and interviewed people and asked them what were they doing to prepare. And what we found was that people who were older, people who had higher income and the ability to buy supplies, but also people who had an internal locus of control, those people who believed that what they do can make a difference to prepare, were more likely to prepare than those who had an external locus of control, those who believed that what was going to happen to them was determined by fate or by luck.
Whenever you like, Mr. Comet, I'm ready.
Stupid idiot! You could have killed her!
Come on.
Catherine, it's over here.
Last one. All full.
In Paris, places and public shelters are scarce and nowhere near enough for everyone who has stayed in the city. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Fernando stumbles on an army barracks.
Hey! Is anyone there?
Come on. Everybody's gone. And they left you to starve?
The chance of survival here, only 800 kilometers from the calculated point of impact, is minimal. No one remains. Even the underground shelters are deserted. The hunters have sighted buffalo near the village. The Baka tribespeople have no idea that their lives will soon change forever. The comet announces its arrival like an angry god.
This is the latest computer simulation. It shows that when the projectile strikes, it doesn't much matter whether it strikes on land or in the ocean. It heats the ground tremendously, just like a super bicycle pump that you've pumped up. The temperature gets up to 100,000 degrees. After it reaches this temperature, it expands out at high speed and throws material out several times the Earth's radius into space. At the same time, it brushes the floor of the impact crater away, throws it out at high speed, and removes about 6 miles of rock from the impact site.
Calm down. Easy there. I'll get this car fixed and I'll take you with me to Yucatan.
Upon impact, the comet releases energy equivalent to more than 100 megatons of TNT.
Come on, Maria, pick up the damn phone.
The crater at this stage is about 60 miles in diameter, and it's lined with partly vaporized and even melted rock. At this stage, the crater begins to collapse under gravity. The floor rises, the adjacent terrain collapses into the cavity, and we're left with a lake of lava 100 miles in diameter. It only takes a couple of seconds for these enormous temperatures to cause an expanding fireball. This fireball is hot, initially 10 times hotter than the surface of the sun. Anything within 1,000 miles that sees that fireball will be incinerated.
Houston is obliterated within seconds. The effect of the impact is felt at once, thousands of kilometers away.
Oh no.
Impact. That was the EMP wave.
The EMP, or electromagnetic pulse, destroys all electronic equipment.
That.
Charged particles create effects similar to gigantic polar auroras.
Sound.
They are harbingers of the coming disaster.
The tremendous amount of energy involved in an impact of this magnitude would cause the release of charged particles, in particular electrons, which would be moving around very, very rapidly. And these particles would give rise to very powerful electric and magnetic fields, which would induce currents in any sort of electrical conductor. Anything containing a computer chip would probably be destroyed.
Silent, invisible, the EMP races around the world.
What's
going to happen now?
no more electricity?
I'm gonna go home.
Go home soon, honey. Don't be afraid.
Hey, Shum! Come look at this!
A cloud of dust and ash has reached Hawaii. It brings a salty, dirty rain that burns the skin. Traces of this phenomenon can be found in geological remains of disasters all over the world. Jan Smit specializes in analyzing the geological traces of the impact at the end of the Cretaceous period.
We have here a special core from the Atlantic Ocean, just one of the many. You have here the slowly deposited sediments of the latest Cretaceous, of the Mesozoic era. Every 10 centimeters is 1,000 years or so. But then, 65 million years ago, we see this layer of green spherules and brownish stuff, and that was deposited only a few days, which demonstrates the enormous power of the impact some 3,000 kilometers away.
Only the poorest of the poor remained in New York City. During the next hour, everything will suffocate under a thick coat of dust and ash. But the next stage of the catastrophe is already underway. When the comet falls into the shallow water off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, it creates a wave almost a kilometer high.
This initial wave immediately breaks down to 30 to 50 meter and loses more height when it runs into deeper water, but it conserves its energy.
Geophysicist Robert Weiss is an expert in the origin of tsunamis.
The wave height goes down in deeper water, but it created a longer wavelength. And this wavelength travels to the coast. The tsunami is not the flow of water, it's a flow of energy, which means that the water particle transfers its energy to the next one. The approaching end pressures water on the front of the wave and builds up a gigantic wall of water.
The tsunami hits a ravaged landscape. What is left of the coastal areas is drowned in the floods. The water surges hundreds of kilometers into the interior.
The tsunami waves leave the Gulf of Mexico and propagate into the Atlantic Ocean.
The gigantic waves simply roll over the Caribbean islands and race along the east coast towards North and South America. A peripheral wave 6 meters high crashes into New York. wave, 100 kilometers long, surges through the streets for hours before it begins to ebb. The waves cross the Atlantic at over 500 kilometers an hour, heading for Africa and Europe. The waves are still almost as massive as when they began. Cities such as Dakar and Lisbon, then Bordeaux and Brest disappear beneath the deluge. Despite warnings, many people have remained in the coastal areas. In the Pacific, there is no tsunami.
Wait!
Come on, Sean.
But the temperature soon rises dramatically.
Rock vapor condenses into small particles. Those small particles will re-enter the atmosphere all over the world and cause the most serious global problems of this impact.
Unbearable heat all over the world. Within minutes, the sky seems to be burning. The scorching heat takes both people and animals by surprise. The Baka people have never experienced anything like it. They perform a ritual to break the terrible spell. The outside temperature is now over 100 degrees Celsius. Even in the observatory basement, the effect of the rising firestorm is obvious. The heat is created by rock vaporized during the impact and hurled out into space.
What's really going to cause the Earth problems is the high-speed ejecta that falls all over the Earth. This stuff has condensed from the vapor, it forms tiny little particles and rains back into the atmosphere all over the Earth. At the same time, there's a lot of rock debris, fist-sized fragments that fall in here and there around the Earth. But the dangerous part is really these small particles. While the particles penetrate the atmosphere, they heat themselves up, and that causes thermal radiation that bathes the surface. The surface temperatures may rise as high as 600 or 700 degrees. That will cause forests to burst into flame. Any unprotected animals, human beings that can't get under cover will essentially be roasted alive.
In Paris, the air is getting thick. It's difficult to breathe.
I'm so hot. How long is it gonna last?
Everything will be okay.
Sarah, come back!
Michelle!
Outside, it is already like an oven.
Michelle!
And the temperature is still rising.
Michelle!
The underground part of the Saint-Martin Canal is salvation from the hell above. The temperature outside soon reaches 400 degrees Celsius. The Earth is burning. The smoke from the fires mixes with the falling dust particles. A thick veil forms over the Earth. At ground level, the only light comes from the fires themselves. When catastrophes occur, everyone pitches in. Search and rescue is organized rapidly and efficiently. But this time?
Bisher war es bei großen Naturkatastrophen immer so, dass die internationale Gemeinschaft sofort Hilfe organisiert hat und ihre Ressourcen mobilisierte und in die regional betroffenen Gebiete verbracht hat. Das wird dieses Mal nicht der Fall sein, weil die dazu notwendige Infrastruktur gar nicht mehr da ist. Es gibt keine Kommunikation, es gibt keine Treibstoffe. Das heißt, die Hilfe wird einfach nicht da sein. Die Welt wird brennen und keiner wird da sein, der sie löschen kann.
The effect on the American continent is devastating. Within a radius of 1,500 kilometers from the point of impact, not one stone is left standing on another. Further away, the Earth is covered in rock expelled by the comet. The only people who survived were in underground shelters. After the dust cloud and the tsunami, fires rage in New York. Fernando's bunker withstood the earth tremors that followed the impact. He survived. But what has happened to this land that was once his home? The Baka tribespeople survived. They took shelter in a nearby cave.
Henry! Over here! It's running. Get in!
Henry manages to hotwire an abandoned car. An older model with no electronics, it survived the high-voltage electromagnetic pulse. Now they face a time that will put society to a grueling test. A time when the rules will be sacrificed in the fight for survival.
Hey, there's a well.
I'm gonna get her something to drink. You sit tight with your mother. Don't leave the car. It's dangerous out there.
The car! Catherine! Ah! Catherine!
In dieser Situation wird es zu extremen Herausforderungen kommen. Individuell, weil es an medizinischer Versorgung und an Ernährung fehlt. Also Mangelkrankheiten werden eine Rolle spielen. Infektionskrankheiten werden sehr schnell zum Tode führen. Die Lebenserwartung wird generell zurückgehen. Aber auch kollektiv wird es zu sehr schweren Problemen kommen. Die Frage ist, welche Wissensbestände können eigentlich wie erhalten bleiben? Das Risiko, dass eine Art neues Mittelalter entsteht, ist sehr hoch.
Would you look at this?
Yeah. Must be lunar or something, but...
Let's look for the others.
You really think you still need those?
Yes. Let's go.
At this stage, no one has any idea of the extent of the catastrophe. Almost 75% of all life has been extinguished. It is uncertain whether the survivors have any chance of a future. The Earth is in the deadly embrace of a night that will last for months. Humanity stands at a crossroads in its history. A comet from the edge of the solar system is on a collision course with the Earth. Leading experts consider the outlook.
There's absolutely nothing we can do to avoid the greatest natural catastrophe that civilization has ever experienced.
This is the moment of truth. May God be with us all.
A mission to deflect the comet fails.
Papa, what's going to happen now?
The whole world faces an uncertain future.
I'll be with you soon, Maria. Good.
Fernando Martinez tries to get back to his wife and children in Mexico. He doesn't know he's heading straight for the impact zone.
They've estimated the coordinates at the point of impact.
The Yucatan Peninsula, the very same place where the comet crashed to Earth 65 million years ago. It's the same scenario. This time, we are the victims.
Last one. All full.
People have no idea what will happen. The comet is unstoppable and deadly.
Anything that's unprotected is going to die within the first few minutes after this impact.
With that one blow, the Earth bursts into flames. It is hotter than the sun. There are worldwide tsunamis. and strange phenomena. Fire pours from the sky like rain.
Michelle!
Only a handful survive the Holocaust. Mankind is thrown into a new dark age.
Would you look at this?
Will the human race survive?
Life clock. By life clock, you mean that the Earth itself, if not an organized ecosystem, can actually come back to life, as it were, after a cataclysmic event.
Kenneth Story, a molecular biologist, studies animal survival strategies.
The last time a comet hit, the life clock did start. Not for everyone. Many species were wiped out. The total biomass on the Earth decreased tremendously. Some species were losers, and that's what we focus on, but some species were winners. They were winners because they survived, like turtles and crocodiles, but the real win was after they survived, there were no competitors.
Where there are no enemies, there's also no one who can help. Fernando survived only a few hundred kilometers from the impact site, but he's completely on his own. Pungent sulfuric gases fill the air. The impact has made the Earth extremely hot. Earth has been draped in darkness for days. The survivors gather around the many bonfires that can be seen from afar. Many are disoriented and traumatized.
Have you seen this woman?
No.
She's wearing a white jacket.
I haven't seen nobody, no.
Henry Vadeau is looking for his wife. They were separated on the night of the impact. After the chaos, there is an eerie calm. There is still enough food to last for a few weeks. But how long will the darkness last?
Bam! Big rock hits the Earth, and it transforms a vast quantity of matter at the surface of the Earth essentially into a vapor.
Matthew Huber studies the history of the Earth, especially the dynamics between the ocean and the atmosphere.
There's a mingling of the mass of the original impactor and plus all of the surface that it vaporized. And that gets pumped up high into the atmosphere, through the troposphere, into the stratosphere, where that rock starts to condense out and form a solid, and it forms a massive layer of dust. Most of the dust will actually be high up in the atmosphere, well above where you and I might be, but it'll be very dark. Most of the sunlight will not make it to the surface, and it'll be as dark as a moonless night.
Since leaving the observatory, the scientists Noah Boyle and Xianya Tan have battled their way across the volcanic terrain of Hawaii. In the damp tropical climate of the rainforest, not all the plants were burnt, but the lack of sunlight is taking an ever-increasing toll. The vegetation also suffered from the acid rain caused by the sulfuric compounds that the impact hurled into the atmosphere.
These plants aren't going to make it without sunlight.
pH value 4.2.
4.2 is approximately the pH value of buttermilk. That in itself is not dangerous. But that level of acidity in the atmosphere slowly releases heavy metals from the soil and can therefore lead to dangerous levels of toxins.
We shouldn't drink this much longer.
We shouldn't stay on this island much longer.
In the darkness, the fertile island has become a desert, hostile to life. Sunlight is our planet's indispensable source of energy. Most plants cannot exist without light, and after a few weeks of darkness, they die. This breaks the first link in the food chain. All life hangs in the balance.
You all know what these are. They're plain, everyday potatoes. And I just want to show you what happens to seeds or tubers like this when they germinate in the ground.
Dr. Vivi Weider specializes in the mass extinctions that have occurred throughout the Earth's history.
They thrive to break through the surface to reach the sunlight. But what happens when the sun is no longer shining? Even in darkness, seeds will germinate.
In their search for light, sprouts shoot up very quickly. In the process, they use up all their reserves of energy.
When they only find total darkness, they will keep on growing as pale sprouts. For some time after the impact, the ground will be covered by white sprouts, and from all kinds of plants.
But in perpetual darkness, the plants run out of energy and they die. The Baka people have adapted to the new conditions. They gather all the food they can that survived the catastrophe. They preserve the meat and store it for the future. Fernando has been waiting for days for the ground to cool. He still doesn't know exactly where the comet hit. There are no reference points in the devastated landscape.
Calm down.
Yet he still decides to press on. The dogs, his only companions, are now vitally important.
You're gonna take me to my family, and then you'll join the family. Let's get ready.
The improvised sleigh glides easily over the microtektites, glass pellets formed from showers of molten rock. They cover the ground for several thousand square kilometers around the point of impact. After long days of searching, Noah and Shang finally find other survivors.
Have you seen his hand?
Hey there! Don't be afraid. Your hand. Let me take a look.
Noah!
I can help you.
Noah, come back! They'll come back for it.
Yeah? I hope so.
Natural disasters can threaten our sense of control, predictability, safety, and trust.
David Sattler specializes in the psychological effects of hurricanes, earthquakes, and tsunamis.
It's so important that we're able to predict what's going to happen to our lives, that we have a daily routine. We all have habits, things that we know happen day to day, what time we wake up and what time we'll go to bed. We know that we can count on a stable supply of food. We know that we can trust that certain supplies will be there at the grocery store. And natural disasters shake our world. It's people who can think flexibly, who can adapt to the new situation and the new challenges. It's people who have a sense of optimism and are able to cope in a way that looks at a problem and says, how can we solve this problem?
Hoping to reach one of the neighboring islands, Noah and Shang build a raft. Except for the one disappointing encounter, they haven't met another living soul, and they realize that in the long run, they don't stand a chance on their own.
Look at this. It's beautiful.
Yeah, poisonous.
It is a mushroom of a kind they've never seen before. This is the start of an era in which fungi will dominate the Earth's surface. The darkness left by the catastrophe has created ideal conditions for all kinds of fungi. Prehistoric fossils tell the same story.
So here we see the KT boundary of New Zealand, and the results from our study shows that below the boundary you find pollen and spores from 100 different plants.
The line known as the KT boundary marks the impact of a meteorite 65 million years ago. It caused a sharp transition from the chalk age to the tertiary period all over the world.
As soon as you get to the boundary layer, I find only fungal spores for about 4 millimeters. You can imagine a scenario with fallen logs, dead animals and plants, and on top of this, fungi was growing, and the reason is that they are not photosynthetic. They don't need sunlight to grow. So for some time after the impact, the fungi rule the earth.
Plants need light to live. Fungi do not. They thrive by breaking down dead organic material. That makes them important in the process of returning nutrients to the soil, making it fertile. Entire landscapes are covered with fungi. Their predominance is short-lived, however. It is superseded by another legacy of the disaster. The long-lasting darkness makes the Earth cool dramatically. Although it is only the first month of the northern autumn, temperatures drop well below freezing. It will be a long winter. Henry and Michelle take refuge in an abandoned farmhouse. The darkness and the freezing temperature make it impossible to do anything and lead to nervous tension.
Why are you messing with this radio, Dad? I'm starving, and we're almost out of firewood.
Listen, I'm hungry too, but we need to know what's going on out there. Are people close by? Can they help us out? Is there a train running? Or cars? We know nothing at all, nothing.
The others say it's warmer in the Mediterranean. Mom would definitely try to go there.
If I can get this thing fixed, then we're going to find Mom. I'm gonna go out and get us some more firewood, okay? Come on. I'm sorry.
Daddy, I want to go home.
I know, honey. Daddy wants to go home too.
In dieser Situation wird es zu ganz neuen Herausforderungen kommen, zu ganz neuen Strukturen in der Gesellschaft. Zuerst einmal braucht man die unmittelbar nützlich sind fürs Überleben.
Sociologist Wolf Dombrowski is an expert in the field of disaster management.
Der Manager ist mit einem Mal nichts mehr wert, wenn er nicht solche Dinge kann. Der Professor ist nichts mehr wert, wenn er nicht bauen, jagen, Nahrungsmittel besorgen kann. Und vielleicht ist auch der nichts mehr wert, der nicht kämpfen kann und schützen kann, die eigenen Leute vor Diebstahl bewahren kann. Das heißt, die ganze bekannte Gesellschaftsstruktur schichtet sich in ihrer Arbeitsteilung um. Und währenddessen gehen natürlich auch extrem wichtige Wissensbestände verloren.
Total darkness has now lasted for 2 months. The temperature is in free fall. A small group of people seek refuge in an abandoned house. In this endless night, people are beginning to lose courage. More and more people fall victim to paralyzing fear. Crowded together with other survivors, Henry and Michelle battle against the merciless cold.
Daddy, wake up, wake up! Now everything is gonna be okay, right?
Yes, honey. Of course.
The first rays of sunlight bring hope of an end to the grueling winter. Matthew Huber has developed a climate model for the months immediately following the disaster.
Now, you might think after a while it'll rain out, it'll fall out, and indeed that's what happens over the course of weeks and months. The dust will settle. But the news is not as good as you might think it is. What ends up happening then is, at the same time as the big rock slammed into the surface of the Earth, what it was slamming into was a whole bunch of carbonate rock and seawater. That injected into the atmosphere a whole bunch of sulfur. And this aerosol or haze persists in the atmosphere long after the dust is settled. And this haze will, in time, lead to a cooling.
Drawing moisture from the atmosphere, the polar ice caps grow ever larger. The climate becomes drier, and the continents freeze over. Paris now lies in the midst of an icy desert with temperatures 40 degrees Celsius below normal. The temperature remains bearable only close to the ocean. In New York City, it is just below freezing. Closer to the equator, people are totally unprepared for the extreme cold. Many of the Baka become sick. Cases of malnutrition are appearing. Lomama sees the cold, white flakes of snow for the first time in his life. His language has no word for them. Where will he find food now? What was once his familiar homeland has turned into a strange and threatening world. All life seems to have been extinguished. At first sight, the situation seems hopeless. But nature is extremely resilient, and over time, it has developed many strategies for survival. The examples are endless.
These are the freeze-tolerant wood frogs of Canada. They survive in our environment for 8 or 9 months, frozen solidly under the ground. As the frog starts to freeze, ice penetrates into the frog through its veins and arteries. Your veins and arteries are like long tubes, and what ice does is it grows down the long tubes, and it pushes the blood into the center of the frog. At this time, the heart is beating very fast. The frogs, although not frightened, their heart speeds up and their blood flow goes very fast. But when ice eventually freezes the blood, then the heart stops, all surrounded by ice. If you have electrodes and put it into the frog brain, no brain activity at all. They are dead. If they were in a hospital, if they were on ER on television, they would be dead, flatlined. But as soon as they thaw out, the organs begin to start again. The electricity comes back to the brain, and they have normal brain patterns. They don't forget what they have learned. They're not damaged. And a impact event far away from them that only extended winter a little bit of time, they might not even, literally not even notice.
When a frog begins to freeze, it produces a large amount of glucose. This prevents the ice crystals from destroying its cells. When the frost is over, the frog thaws out and awakens to new life. Yesterday, Fernando's food ran out. Now, suddenly, the dogs have vanished.
Hey, guys! Hey! Hey, guys! Come on! Hey!
Fernando's chances of survival on his own are minimal, but despair drives him on. Sulfurous fumes make it difficult to breathe, and despite the worldwide drop in temperature, here, close to the impact point, it is still warm. Without water, his days are numbered. Time is also running out for Noah and Shang.
We're never gonna make this work.
Come on, we're almost there.
Shang, look out! Get down!
The funny thing is, that's just normal activity. I don't think it has anything to do with the impact.
Who's that?
It's Chad. I thought you were...
We're building a raft to get over to Maui. Manalore is overdue. We don't want to be around when she starts to spit.
Do you think you've got time to finish that? Hey, come with me.
The scientists actually ruled out the possibility of volcanic activity resulting from the impact of the comet. But active volcanoes, such as Mauna Loa, are powder cakes. They can erupt at any time. Mauna Loa now awakes from its sleep. Europe remains in the grip of icy cold. Inland, it is unbearable. But the return of daylight brings hope to the hearts of the desperate. One group decides to make for the south. Henry and Michelle are among that group. Their only chance of survival lies in flight. Staying where they are means certain death. They want to reach the Mediterranean. There, where it's warmer, they hope things will be better. But they face a long and dangerous journey on foot.
One of the things that's going to happen is that the insides of the continents are going to get extremely cold, something like 30, 40, up to 50 degrees below zero. And we can also expect that the oceans will not be that cold. So if you want to survive, the place to go is the coasts. As far as I can tell, the best place to be is right near a large body of water that's going to retain its heat. If you move away from the coasts, the temperatures are going to be like nothing that you've ever experienced before.
Well, what do you think then? You still want to keep working on your death trap? The Macaulay, we found a little cave nearby. Hey, everybody, this is Noah and Shine. They're coming with us. We leave tomorrow morning.
Noah and Shang can sense the distrust of the others. Space and resources on the yacht are limited as it is. But they have no choice. They must get off the island. The basalt lava, heated to over 1,000 degrees Celsius, leaves a trail of destruction as it creeps down Mauna Loa and over the foothills. Henry and Michelle have taken refuge in an abandoned railway station. Henry still hopes to use his radio set to contact other survivors and maybe, just maybe, find his wife. Father and daughter have so far been able to avoid falling ill. It is an ever-present danger. Medicine is practically non-existent. A tiny infection, when combined with a poor diet, can be a death sentence. Michelle misses her mother badly. Everywhere they go, she looks for some trace of her. The catastrophe has torn countless families apart. Notices and urgent appeals are posted everywhere, but there's not a sign of her mother. Although her group is now not far from the sea, it's by no means certain that they will make it. Too many of them are sick and weak. Their progress is very slow. Then she makes an exciting discovery.
Daddy! We're going to find her.
The handcar proves their salvation. The coast is suddenly within easy reach. A gigantic mountain of loose rocks towers up before Fernando. There's no way around it. Plagued by hunger and thirst, he struggles on. This is the end of the road. He has reached the comet's impact point. It is a crater 200 kilometers across, full of molten lava. For more than 1,000 kilometers all around, nothing has survived. Aboard the yacht, the atmosphere is tense. Chad, the helmsman, has lost his way. The food supply is dwindling and they haven't caught a fish for days.
I've got something!
Let's go, Sharon!
We starve?
Sharon!
Grab the rope! I got you!
Shang was lucky. The shark, too, has been looking for a meal for a long time. Marine life is all but extinguished. Only a few creatures have survived, and they are hungry. The long period without photosynthesis has affected the delicate ecosystem of the ocean. It will take a long time to regenerate. Henry and Michelle's group has finally reached the coast. But father and daughter are both in low spirits. The search for Catherine has gone on for too long and has taken its toll.
Dad,
What is it, Michelle?
where are we going?
What?
Just tell me.
Pepignon, Toreres, San Nazea, maybe Egeles. I don't know. We'll see.
We're going to find Mom. I know we will.
In the Pacific, the yacht with its refugees floats in a calm. Everything is still, too still.
Hey,
Hey.
don't you think that's all just history now?
That's why I'm saving it. For the record.
You'll never make it. Have no chance. Calm down.
The refugees suspect nothing, but overhead a storm is brewing, a consequence of the extreme climatic changes the Earth has undergone.
Winds are driven by really strong temperature gradients, and we can expect fantastic wind speeds associated with this really strong temperature gradient. Now, over the oceans, where there's nothing to block these winds as they get stronger, we can expect massive storms, about as strong as we might find in a tornado, except in the ocean regions, and we might have winds as strong as several hundred miles per hour blowing.
The cyclone suddenly blows up out of nowhere. The boat hasn't the slightest chance against it. Henry and Michelle's group have been trekking south for days now. Their joy at having escaped the ice gives way to the sobering realization that even though it's warmer here, they still haven't met a single soul, nor have they found a suitable place to settle.
Michelle!
What should a person do in this kind of a situation where you're meeting a strange group for the first time in unfamiliar territories?
The anthropologist Stanley Ambrose has studied social cooperation after natural disasters where much of the population is lost.
During difficult times in Earth history, human history, such as during the last ice age, especially the early part of the last ice age, when times were really tough, the best option for survival would have been to cooperate with your neighbors over long distances. And giving gifts to your neighbors was probably one of the best ways of ensuring your access to those territories that you might need to go to when the resources in your area failed. So to make a long story short, I think these very difficult environmental conditions was a strong natural selection pressure for cooperation.
There are a lot of crooks around here. Where are you from?
Paris.
There's another group that arrived last week. Come with us.
We're safe, honey.
Can't sleep.
I'm so tired.
Birds. Please land. Can't be far now.
哎呀，我们不想看了，已经有很多死人了。我们走吧，我们走吧。赶快找人来救！等一下，我们找人过来救。
Some of the survivors have settled in this oasis in the middle of a vast wasteland at the foot of the Pyrenees. The Vados are reunited at last. For a moment, all the stress seems far in the past. And yet it seems like it was only yesterday that a mission failed and a super comet hit the Earth. Changing everything forever. And annihilating civilization. Does the human race have a chance to survive? Will the Earth recover? For the scientists, the answer is clear.
The first event was in a largely tropical world. Canada, which is now cold and has deserts and has animals that survive freezing, was a tropical paradise. There was huge trees. There were dinosaurs roaming around Canada, and we have immense oil reserves to prove it. This time, what happens is after the event, after, of course, the 800-degree day, after the winter, there's many more environments that have spawned animals that should survive better. The life clock will start more quickly. It will start on a more active basis, that is, more animals will survive, and different kinds of animals will survive. Maybe even mammals who will come out of their dens of hibernation, stretch, find food, and be able to live literally the first year out of the box.
When Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, an entire mountaintop slid down, devastating an area of 500 square kilometers. It looked like all life in the region had been extinguished forever. But nature recovered quickly, much more quickly than the scientists had expected. Not only did plant life regenerate, but animals, ever adaptable, also returned. If there is a lesson to be learned from such a disaster, it is one of hope. Even the scientists cannot say just how life will go on, but one thing is certain: the life clock will go on ticking. In the course of its evolution, the human race has survived many catastrophes. The Baka have found a new home by the sea where there is enough food and warmth to sustain them. How will people come to grips with life after such a catastrophe? How, in the long term, will they cope with the loss of their civilization? They will undoubtedly build new settlements and adapt to their new conditions. The children born after the catastrophe will think that the old world their parents tell them about is nothing more than a story from a planet far away. Technology will soon develop once again, allowing people to open up the enclaves they are now confined to. Our blue planet will recover from the cataclysm, as it has done so often in the course of its history. Many species will be lost forever, but new forms of life will see the light of day.